guys, welcome back here to Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to spend some of your day with me. And guys, today I'm going to talk about some more glide bait fishing. Big glide baits, these 6, 7, 8-inch glide baits. We are in the top time of the year to fish a glide bait right now. At the time of filming this video, we're in about the third week of April. April, May, and sort of into early June is probably the 3 best months of the year to fish a glide bait, followed up by the fall time of the year, like in October and November. So we've talked about this before, but I want to sort of give you guys a little refresher course on how to fish them, type of areas they work in, the situations they work under. And if you've never caught a bass on a glide bait, this is going to be a good video for you guys. And if you've got some experience fishing, I'll share some stuff with you guys that's worked for me that'll maybe help you guys out as well. Also, guys, I'll put my the glide bait, a couple of the glide baits I used in my tackle warehouse link in this description in this video here. There's 3 or 4 different ones that I use, so I'll link those in the description. And the thing about a glide bait, guys, they are high dollar. I mean, glide baits are expensive, but you don't ever lose them. You throw them on 25-pound test line and a flipping stick. So I have never lost a glide bait. So, you know, that's one thing that should be comforting. Even though they cost more, you know, you're going to have them forever. It's not like you're going to lose them like breaking a jig off for a crankbait. So anyway, I'll put that link in the description. And also, guys, real quick, anybody interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, if you want to learn how to fish a glide bait or any other technique I can help teach you, just go to my Facebook page, Intuitive Angling with Randy Blaukat, and shoot me a private message for info. So appreciate that. Okay, glide baits, guys, they've been around forever. They're different from a swim bait in the fact that a glide bait, most of them are hard. And also most of them have a joint in it like this for the extra action. And they come in a lot of different type of bait fish imitators. Here's a gizzard. This is a gizzard shad here, but they come in different type of perch patterns, bluegill patterns, bass patterns. There's a lot of different, forage that they come in. But the main thing about a glide bait, it's a big bait for big bass. So there's a lot of different nuances to this bait that's going to help you guys either catch fish on it or not. Here's some things we'll start out with a glide bait. Overall, with glide bait fishing, one of the things you've got to accept is you're not going to get a lot of bites on them. I'm not saying that you can't have a day where you get 20 bites on them, but for the most part, it's going to be a deal where you go out and if you throw it all day long and you get 4 or 5 bites on it, you've had a great day. Also with that, you've got to fish a glide bait in the areas where bass will bite a glide bait. In other words, you have to have a lake that's got a pretty decent population of at least 3-pound class fish. That's why, California, Florida, and Texas are the 3 best lakes for 3 best states for glide bait fishing. They have a lot of big fish there. It's a big fish technique. So this is not going to work very good if you fish a heavily fished body of water that's not known for quality fish. This is not anything you want to spend any time on. It's for big fish, it's for aggressive fish, and that's just sort of the window that it has there. So that's sort of the same thing. And with that, you got to have sort of this mental shift when you're fishing a glide bait, because when you're throwing this thing, number one, you can't pick it up and throw it for like 15 minutes and then put it down and say they're not biting a glide bait. If you want to catch bass on a glide bait and you want to have success with a glide bait, you got to take nothing but a glide bait to the lake with you and throw it all day long. I would suggest, if you are serious about catching some fish on a glide bait, is that you get 2 or 3 glide baits, 2 or 3 flipping sticks, or the rod we'll talk about, and don't put anything else in your boat. That way you're going to be forced to throw the glide bait all day long. That is the difference that separates the people that catch fish on a glide bait and the people that don't, is a commitment to it. You've got to commit to this thing. Because when you're talking about a big honking bait like this, there's not a lot of fish that just go up and attack this thing since it's so big. Even though they are lifelike looking, bass aren't smart, bass aren't dumb. And one of the things about a glide bait is bass will track a glide bait a lot. And they look at it, and most of the time they will not bite it. I'm gonna say on a glide bait, if you get the attention of say 100 bass throughout the course of however many months that you're fishing a glide bait, out of that 100 bass, if you get 5 or 6 of those bass to actually bite the lure, that's pretty decent. You're gonna have a ton of fish that come up to it and they may get 3 or 4 foot away from it and then they just swim off, or they'll come up to it and they'll get right next to it and they'll swim off, or they come up to it and they'll grab it by the tail and then swim off. That's what happens most of the time with glide bait fishing. That's just the inherent nature of fishing those big baits. They get the fish's attention, but they don't get the fish to commit to that bait a lot. So given that, let's talk about some things you can do to get them to commit to the bait. First of all, first before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the equipment. Based upon the glide bait you're fishing, you got to have heavy equipment. I usually use this Megabass Alcleese flip and stick, 25-pound test Seaguar and Vizex line with my glide baits. If you're using truly a big glide bait, like one of those 10-inchers, you may have to go to an 8-foot extra heavy rod, some type of super heavy rod, but you got to throw it on heavy equipment. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about what you have to have in order for this thing to work. There are several windows throughout the course of the year as far as weather conditions that are very conducive for glide bait fishing. Now I'm talking about springtime fishing in today's video, so a little bit different than fall time. What you have to have in the spring, number one, is you have to have water visibility. I like it at least 2.5 foot of clarity. You know, ideally I want 3 to 6 foot of clarity. Clear water situation for a glide bait, because a glide bait is a sight bait. That's what you're relying on for the fish to see the thing. They're gonna get fooled. They think it's a big, meal for them. So they have to see it. It doesn't displace a lot of water. It doesn't make a lot of action in the water, and it doesn't make much noise in the water. So therefore, that's why you have to have clear water. In correlation with that clear water, if you're gonna catch fish on a glide bait, you have got to have some wind. It's very difficult to get a bass to bite a glide bait on calm conditions or light winds. I like it, 10 to 20 mile an hour wind most of the time for my glide baits. Another thing with it is you need to have a south or some type of a southwesterly or westerly airflow. Not gonna bite it very good after front. When the wind switches around to the north, there's something about it, they just don't want that. Some type of a southerly airflow, and it helps if you have some type of a prefrontal condition. Let's say, for example, there's a front coming in that's gonna come into your area in a day or two. And traditionally, when a front's coming through, you start to get a little bit of overcast, you start to get a little bit of wind, your barometric pressure starts to fall a little bit, and these are the things that are conducive to a bass bite and a glide bait. So that's the best time to go fishing. Perfect situation. Let me lay out the perfect Maytime bass fishing situation for a glide bait. Some type of a partly cloudy or cloudy day with a 10 to 20 mile an hour wind. Water visibility at 3 to 5 foot in that zone there. You want to have the fish sort of in that early post-spawn stage where there may be still some fish garden fry, but some fish are starting to move out. Got a lot of fish moving in and out of shallow water. That's the number one thing. And then having that commitment to throw it all day. That's going to create a situation where it's conducive to actually getting these fish to bite a glide bait. Now, the type of area that you want to fish in, it really just depends on how your lake's set up. Probably my favorite place to fish a glide bait during the early spring, during the early post-spawn period, is just on the outside of those spawning areas. So let's say, for example, if I got a big cove where I know the fish have been spawning in, I'll take that glide bait and I'll make a long parallel cast on out a little bit deeper away from those beds. So say the fish are spawning in 2 to 4 foot of water, I'll throw that glide bait into 2 to 4 foot of water and work it out a little bit deeper, trying to pull some of those post-spawn fish that have just slid out a little bit deeper to hit that bait. Next, I'll fish some type of a secondary point leading into a spawning cove. And third, and this is something that works good in the fall time too, is paralleling steep rocky banks or bluff banks with it. That's gonna get you some decent fish. And if you have a grass lake, obviously over those grass flats is gonna be where it works the best. Now, one of the things that will surprise you about a glide bait is the time of day that they bite it the best. You would think something like this, you'd want some type of a really low light condition, like early in the morning or later in the evening. That's not really the case. I've done better on a glide bait right up in the middle of the day. When the light intensity is at the max, there's something about it allows them to see that bait better, and with the correlation with the clear water, brighter sky conditions, they'll bite it, with that a lot better. Couple of other things. Let me give you some tips as far as how to work a glide bait. Most of the glide baits, they're designed when you just reel them in like this, they swim side to side. But what you want to do to help you is what I do is I'll throw it out there and I'll reel it 5 or 6 cranks and then I'll jerk it slow, like boom, boom, boom. And what that does is it allows, instead of that glide bait swimming like that consistently, it'll go boom, and I'll let it float, boom, like that. And it makes it a little bit more, it creates more of a reaction strike. When you twitch that rod like that, it throws that glide bait out a little bit farther. A lot of times they're gonna bite it when you do that. Now, one of the biggest pieces of advice I'll give you on it was actually my buddy Oliver and I shared with me that I have seen works for myself, is that you'll get a lot of followers on a glide bait. And the tendency when you get followers, you want to like slow the bait down or stop it so they can get it. You don't want to do that. When you see a bass following your glide bait, work it fast. You know, if you're, in other words, if you're working your glide bait like that and you see a fish following it, speed it upwards like that, like go boom, 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 like get it all crazy looking. And that way they'll have to make a decision. It's like, okay, I either need to eat this bait now or I'm gonna miss it, or I need to just leave it alone. So I have found more than not, if you really speed a glide bait up fast, when you see a fish, after it, a lot of times that'll help trigger that strike with it. So anyway, guys, just a little brief glide bait summary, the glide bait seminar there. It's not for everybody, I can tell you right now. You're gonna have a lot more casting experiences than you are catching experiences with a glide bait for the most part. But there's not another lure out there that you have a better chance of catching a really giant bass than on a glide bait. So anyway, I hope it helps out, guys. We'll talk later.